This video is focused around enabling monitoring via XPack. We'll do a quick review of the XPack features. We'll install XPack within Elasticsearch and Kibana, and then I'll show you the quick interface changes to Kibana after we have XPack installed and enabled. XPack is a series of plugins that Elastic provides for Kibana, Logstash, and Elasticsearch. What we'll see today is how XPack enables monitoring and management, development tools, which comprise of the search profiler, which is very important when it comes to Elasticsearch. Searches can be quite difficult to build, as well as a Grok debugger, which really helps us when we're building Logstash Grok filters, which we'll get into in the future. XPack also provides security, reporting, machine learning, and a graph functionality. Security allows you to develop roles and users to provide access to Kibana, as well as different indexes, as well as datas. Reporting allows you to build time-bound reports that you can share with others. The machine learning functionality is pretty new within Elasticsearch. It was introduced in Elasticsearch 5.4. The machine learning engine can start monitoring your data and making correlations that you probably wouldn't make on your own. Graph allows you to pivot from one data point to another on common fields. All right, let's install XPack. We'll start with Elasticsearch, and then we'll move to Kibana. I forewarn you, the Kibana XPack installation takes a few extra minutes because it does a lot of pre-processing work on node packages and optimization of the node code that gets generated. So we'll hop back over to our Elasticsearch machine. This is the same one we've set up Elasticsearch 6 and Kibana 6. They're both running. As you can see, we still have the Kibana interface up here. So first, let's install XPack for Kibana. We'll make sure we're root. And Kibana is installed by default in user/share/Kibana. Elastic provides a nice plugin function to allow you to install and remove plugins pretty straightforward. They get downloaded from the Elastic website on demand. So here we'll execute bin Kibana plugin. We'll tell it to install XPack. This is a part that takes a few minutes, so I'm going to sit back and find some coffee. All right, now that that is finished, let's restart Kibana. Now that Kibana is restarted, let's install XPack for Elasticsearch. Here we'll do the same thing. It's bin Elasticsearch plugin install XPack. As a reminder, this is user/share/Elasticsearch, and you can execute bin Elasticsearch plugin. This plugin requires some permissions that other plugins don't require. It needs access to a few different Java functions within the application, so we're going to allow it to do that. It's also going to run some extra code that's not part of Elasticsearch when it runs, so it needs more permissions there too. Now that that's been installed, since I've done this a few times, I know we need to update the Elasticsearch configuration to disable security. Eventually we'll add security, but for now let's keep it off. Let's restart Elasticsearch. Now let's make sure both of our programs are running. And I'm doing that by looking at what TCP ports are being listened to on this server. So I have 5601, which is Kibana. I have 9200, which is Elasticsearch. Great. So now let's swing back over to our Kibana interface, and we'll do a hard refresh. Aha! Now if we look on the side here, it says, "Welcome to XPack. Sharing your cluster statistics with us will help improve." We'll dismiss that for now. Now we have some cool new features. We have the machine learning, where we create new jobs. We'll get into that in the machine learning section later. We have the graph interface as well. We'll dig into the graph interface later when we get to the graph section. The development tools, this is where we can run some test code to put some documents or get some documents. We can do our Grok profiler, where you put in some data, you test a Grok pattern, and it'll show you what comes out. And we can test the search profile to see how efficient our searches are. Management stays the same, but when we have Logstash, we can look at our Logstash pipelines, which we don't have yet, but we will be building that. We can look at Elasticsearch Watcher, for monitoring and for alerting. We have reporting, where we can generate reports. And here's our monitoring section. Let's look at this to see the overview of what we have now. So far, we have Elasticsearch, and you'll notice that it's yellow because we don't have any other nodes in our cluster. When we put other nodes in our cluster, then it will be able to distribute the data so it is redundant. When it matches how much redundancy we have configured, right now I think we have configured by default to one piece of redundant data called shards. It's one redundant shard, then it'll go green. So we'll see a lot of yellow throughout this until we start adding nodes to our cluster, which we'll do soon. So we can look at Kibana. We can see how many requests we're getting per second, what the response times look like. This is really helpful in performance tuning. We can look at the specific instances of Kibana. So this host that we're running it on is Elasticsearch 6. It's running green, very little load, very little memory being used, and total number of requests to it. We can also look at our Elasticsearch overview. So here we can see our search rate, which now is going higher because Kibana stores all of its configuration and metrics within Elasticsearch itself, which is kind of nice. But we can see that we're actually hitting and performing some searches and some slow indexing just to insert those metrics. We can do indexing latency and search latency. These are really helpful over time, so we can see how the health of our cluster is. If we're not able to insert as much data as we expect, or if our searches are going slow, we can come in here. We can look at individual nodes, just like Kibana. In this case, it's the same node. The star means it's a master node, and we'll get into more of that later. We can look at our status, CPU usage, load, JVM memory, as well as disk space. You can see I have almost 45 gigabytes of data used on the whole disk. It's one disk in this machine, so it's operating system and elastic data. We don't have any visible indexes here, or indices here, because they're all hidden. They all start with this dot. This dot is used basically for internal indexes like the Kibana configuration, monitoring, watches, etc. And then there's jobs that we can look at. This is a new feature in Elastic 6 to be able to see the machine learning jobs within the user interface like we talked about before. And again, we'll dive into that. So that's installing XPack. In our next video, I'll show you some examples on how you can load data in Elasticsearch via the RESTful API. After that, we'll look at Logstash and FileBeats, or the whole Beats suite. But for now, we'll do some quick Python and some RESTful API data indexing.